Welcome to episode 6 of Restoration Beyond the Couch, brought to you by Restoration Counseling. Today, we're thrilled to have an enlightening conversation with Dr. Lee Long, visionary author and founder of Restoration Counseling, alongside Brandon Stewart, an expert in OCD treatment and restoration. Together, we'll delve into the complexities of Obsessive-Compulsive Disorder, or OCD, and explore effective strategies and therapies to manage this condition. Join us as we discuss the core principles of OCD treatment, share valuable insights, and provide actionable advice that you can apply in your daily life. Your path to mental wellness starts here.
Welcome, Brandon. It is good to have you back on the podcast.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, we are going to talk about OCD, Obsessive-Compulsive Disorder. And I think there's a bit of a misconception about what OCD is. I think it's kind of turned into a little bit of a colloquial term where we say, oh yeah, I like things straight. I have a bout of OCD, or, things like that. But for those who are unfamiliar with the clinical aspect of OCD, could you explain what it is and how it manifests?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the easiest way to understand OCD is just to define what is the O and what is the C.
Okay.
So obsessive and compulsive, those are two very different things. They're separate. The obsessions part of OCD, obsessions are unwanted, intrusive thoughts, images, urges, or impulses. So that's what's going on mentally within a person's head. It's what they're thinking about. And they don't want to think about it, but it is going on in their head. So the obsession part is not visible to other people.
Okay, so that's, you said, the thoughts, images, impulses, and urges.
Yeah. And then compulsions are, what do I do to reduce the anxiety that is being caused by those thoughts, urges, impulses, images? So the compulsion is more so of a behavior, and it's a behavior that I do to calm down my anxiety. And
so an example might be that if I feel like I have germs on my hands,
right,
that would be the obsession. The compulsion would be, then I would wash my hands frequently.
Yeah. So you're exactly right. And hand washing is an easy one to think about. So it's the obsessional part of that is, I could be thinking in my head, okay, what did I just touch? Okay. Oh my gosh, I think I touched the bottom of my shoe, and I just left the bathroom, and that bathroom was so dirty. And so I've touched the bottom of my shoe, and now that's on my hands, and I've maybe have some sort of, fecal matter on my hand. And I just touched my jacket, and I just touched my ear, and all of those images of thinking about germs going through my head. And then the compulsion, as you said, I'm washing my hands. I may be, taking off my jacket now that I think is dirty. I'm going to go and wash it. But doing those types of behaviors for me to feel better.
And I mean, that sounds like it could be quite torturing to those who experience this.
Oh yeah.
Your mind takes you on a journey, so to speak, that you're going through every possibility of what you may have come in contact with. And then trying to undo the exposure to the germs, so to speak, could really be a torturous place.
Absolutely.
At the same time, I think that everything operates, well, not everything, but I think most things operate on a spectrum. So do you see that there are some people that have this struggle where it's debilitating, and then others who have this struggle where it's just a minor annoyance?
Yes. Yeah. Overall, the minor annoyance, I was getting hung up on that. But yes, there's a scale where they have people rate their obsessions and compulsions. One level is non-significant, and that would be kind of, it's a mild annoyance, like you're saying, of not a big deal. It's almost maybe like a quirk, but it really doesn't cause much distress or interference. But it can go from non-significant to mild to moderate to severe to extreme, where it is absolutely disabling, where a person cannot work, cannot leave their house, is not engaging in any sort of relationships. Really sad, tough place that a person could be with OCD. And you mentioned earlier about common misconceptions about OCD. And I think one main misconception that I often encounter is that OCD is a cute little quirk.
Right.
And it's kind of funny and it's, not that big of a deal. And, if I were to have anything, I'll take OCD kind of thing.
Right.
And that couldn't be farther from the truth of meeting with a lot of people with OCD. It is very distressing. It's not cute. It's not fun. It takes up so much mental space and mental energy, and can really wear a person down, can lead to depression, can shrink their world, and prevent them from living a life that they enjoy or want.
Right. It almost is like you're describing a loss of a sense of freedom.
Oh, yeah.
That the world feels very shackling to them.
Absolutely.
And I think about what you're talking about here, and it's hard to reason. Like when you were saying, I got hung up on the idea of you saying that it's just a minor inconvenience or something to the like. And I almost joked and said, "Oh, so do you have OCD about my words here?" But I also recognize, and I know OCD is not a joking matter. Like on in every sense of the word, it is not a joking matter.
Yeah.
But I do think that we do have this misconception in our culture that like we think, oh, I'm depressed. Well, clinical depression is very, very different than saying I'm sad about something.
Yeah.
But we don't have full language around how to describe that.
Right.
And with OCD, when someone is particular about something, or when somebody's a neatnik, or when somebody is, wanting their shirt just so we have these things, we say, oh, that's OCD. But in truth, it could be, but more likely is the sense that that's just a particular, there's just somebody being particular about something.
Right. A temperament.
Right. But when you have OCD, you're really looking at something that can be like depression, like real clinical depression can be severely debilitating to someone. That OCD, like clinical true OCD, can really be debilitating and have a really hard impact on the person struggling with that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Another common misconception, and kind of piggybacking off of what you said, is that OCD is only about being orderly or, liking your desk straight and things lined up, or is only about germs. So that can be, as we're saying, one, that can just be, hey, you're particular and specific, and that's just your temperament. Or it can go into a disorder and be truly clinically OCD.
Right.
But there's actually a lot of other types of obsessions that a person can have within OCD that are not talked about as much. So we know about the hand washing, we know about maybe symmetry and orderliness, but there's also many other obsessions that are related to violent, intrusive thoughts, sexual intrusive thoughts, religious thoughts, kind of what some people call bad thoughts or dark thoughts, to where those can actually go very much so undetected, because you're not seeing them, and a person's not going to be just like willingly open to talk about that thing.
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing these up, Brandon, because one of the things that one of the hopes that we have in talking about this is bringing light to this subject, that these internal dark thoughts can really plague someone.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't know if it's appropriate to share them somewhere because of the judgment they are fearful that they will receive as a result.
Right.
But you're saying, and I think saying it well, that this is really woven into part of what is classified as an obsession, as a part of OCD.
And the tricky thing about those is that a lot of times the compulsion is not an outward behavior like washing hands.
Right.
It's a internal thought pattern.
Right.
So I could have a violent, intrusive thought. That's the obsession of, this is graphic, but this is what it can be, of me stabbing my friend. And I've got that violent image in my mind. I don't want to have that.
I think that's the important thing to note.
Yes.
It's not somebody who is violent, who is angry at their friend, who's thinking that they want to kill someone.
Right.
This is an intrusive thought.
And they're usually the nicest, most conscientious people.
Exactly.
And so that image really scares them. They don't like that at all. That's, not in their character, and it disturbs them. It upsets them.
Sure. And
so for their compulsion, it might be visually in their mind trying to erase that, like an eraser. You're erasing a drawing. Or it could be analyzing it and figuring it out, of reassuring myself, no, I don't want to do that. That's not me.
Right.
Take it back. I take it back. Or like a special prayer. And then they get stuck in this loop, trying to calm that down, trying to make it go away. But all of it's internal, so you're never going to see it.
And it's, to me, as I've conceptualized this in my own mind, walking through learning all of this, is it's almost like blowing out trick candles. It works for a moment, but then it comes right back on. Or it lights right back up. And we constantly, and so we get fixated on blowing that candle out, because that candle, understandably so, is extremely internally undoing. And so we get focused on blowing that candle out over and over and over, and trying to live life as a result when we're just focused on that candle, which is very disturbing. It, like you said earlier, it does shrink the world. Yeah.
That's a good analogy. I like that.
Yeah. That makes sense. What, as we think about OCD and we think about, the role of the family or friends, like what is something that we could share with our listeners, like that may have someone who's struggling with OCD? What role could they play in supporting their loved one that has this struggle?
First, right off the bat, I think the most helpful thing is getting educated on it. Learning about OCD.
So listening to this podcast is step one.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yes.
Well done.
Check. Yes. Education, learning about OCD. As we're talking, there's a lot of misconceptions about it. And so if a family member or a loved one really learns about the intricacies and nuances of OCD, that is huge. And now all of a sudden the person suffering from OCD has an advocate who gets it, who understands it, and doesn't think they're crazy. That's just so much helpful connection there if someone is meeting you there in that spot.
I think that's a great point, is that you're pointing out this sense of curiosity, which curiosity in any relationship is paramount. In relationship to yourself, in relationship to others, having that sense of curiosity is big. So curiosity as a family member to learn more about this, I think, decently misunderstood issue. Secondly, you're saying that it's to approach that loved one, that family member or friend, with a non-judgmental stance. Like they're not crazy.
No.
That there's not something here that this is something that is, it's like going back to the analogy of the trick candle.
Yeah.
It's like they're really trying to extinguish this, but extinguishing it in the manner that it's being attempted is just simply unsuccessful.
Right.
Much to the chagrin of the person trying to blow out the candle.
Yeah.
But they really are trying to be effective in extinguishing this. And so meeting them in a non-judgmental fashion. So curiosity, non-judgmental. Any other tips for families or friends?
So education's a big piece. And then also I would say, when the person is ready, that you can support them in doing the treatment that they're receiving for OCD. And mainly what I'm thinking there is supporting them in their exposure work.
Will you tell us a little bit about what exposure work is?
Yes. Yeah. So the technical definition is exposure and response prevention. So again, easiest one to explain and understand is the germs and hand washing. So I would, if I'm struggling with that, then I would expose myself to a contaminated object, such as a doorknob. So I expose myself and I touch the doorknob with my bare hands. Then response prevention, meaning my typical response is prevented. So I'm not going to do what I typically do, i.e. wash my hands. So I'm exposing myself to a contaminated object on my bare hands, and then I am not going to wash my hands. And maybe I would do that for 30 minutes. I've touched a doorknob, I don't wash my hands, and then I just kind of sit with that for 30 minutes. I keep going about my day, and I have contaminated hands for 30 minutes. That could be an example of what exposure is. So that's very difficult. That's really hard work. So let's say the loved one can encourage them in that, support them in that, because they have learned about OCD. They know that that's really hard. That's not just something simple to do. So, they can give them a genuine pat on the back because they know how hard that is. And also in supporting with exposure, sometimes a family member or loved one can get pulled into a compulsion, which is common, of reassurance. And so I've touched the doorknob and I might ask my friend, you think that's okay? Do you think my hand is okay? Like there aren't actually germs on my hands. Like you don't think I have cancer now, do you? And the friend, if they give reassurance, no, you're fine. It's okay. Being technical, that's a compulsion. So if your friend would be willing to do it and the person suffering from OCD is willing to do it, to have your friend no longer give you that reassurance.
Right. Because that is as loving as it feels to reassure someone. You're participating in the attempt to neutralize that angst.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that turns into a trick candle over and over and over again. And now you're saying, well, let's blow on this together.
Right.
And now we're looped into we're compulsively looped into neutralizing this anxiety. When I think what you're proposing here, which I think is a brilliant proposal, is the idea that we just have to be exposed to it and understand that we can be okay in the midst of our pain. Now, it is painful. And I love how you're describing this, because we don't want to take anything away from those who are struggling with that obsession of germs or dark thoughts or whatever the obsession is paired with, or paired to, I should say. It's that place of being really meeting them. And you're saying that for the loved ones, and the way that this all works out is that we meet them in that place of encouraging them in the sense that you did it.
Yeah.
this is really exciting or powerful,
Right,
or
right.
congratulations, or however you want to meet them, but it's
Right.
really truly encouraging the work.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're not alone in it. No.
Right. That's a great point.
Because with OCD, there commonly is a lot of shame of, again, what's wrong with me? I'm crazy. I'm weird. No one else has this. I'm different. And as you're saying, someone who's partnering with you in that
Right.
is really powerful and can really calm down the shame.
Yeah. And it's really, that's a great point, Brandon, because feeling lonely in things or isolated in things really amplifies what we're going through.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of having a sense of community that can see you allows you to show up authentically you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. I think that's great.
Absolutely.
So you've already talked about some of the treatment that's been effective for OCD, the whole exposure response prevention, the ERP work. Are there other strategies that you want to comment on that are helpful managing OCD?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the most common treatment is cognitive behavioral therapy with exposure response prevention. Part of what a person's going to get with CBT is understanding thinking mistakes. OCD has a lot of tricky ways that it sees your thoughts that can kind of get you confused. And so with CBT, you're going to learn about, hey, here's the trick that's happening, and you kind of get behind the curtains, and that can help with some of the confusion and mystery with it. Also within CBT, various relaxation techniques can be helpful. Breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, self-soothe, in some places distract. So that's common. Then there's also, to your question, mindfulness techniques and acceptance techniques. I often find these helpful for the darker thoughts.
Right.
And it's kind of complicated, but when it comes to the darker thoughts that a person hates, they don't want to have those. A common compulsion is to avoid them and to wrestle with them and try to make them go away, which is a completely understandable response.
Sure. And it's the exact same response as trying to make the germs go away by going straight to the sink.
Right.
When that's ineffective in the end.
Yeah. I wish it worked, but unfortunately it doesn't.
Correct.
So it doesn't work to try to fight with it. An analogy I've heard is that old school cartoon, Briar Rabbit with the tar baby, where he, punches the tar baby to make it go away, but now he's got one hand stuck on it, uses his other hand, now he's stuck on it with both hands, uses his feet, and, before he knows it, he's completely covered in it. So trying to make those thoughts go away can often result in something similar to that. So in short, mindfulness and acceptance principles have to do with learning to observe a thought just as a thought, that it's going to come up. And if we let it just be there and let it pass naturally, it will do that. Like all the other thoughts that we have, we have hundreds of thousands of thoughts a day. And if we can learn to step back just as an observer, watch them and watch it come and go,
without assigning meaning to it.
Yeah.
That's the power. It's interesting because any grad students out there that are studying counseling or mental health, when I wonder if this was the same for you. When you go through abnormal psychology, you read the DSM and you're studying it and you think, oh my gosh, I have everything here, or loved ones have everything here. And one of the comforting things was to come back to class and realize everybody in the class kind of felt the same way.
Yes.
but the interesting thing that I learned way back when was that we all have these strange or unusual thoughts that fly over our head.
Mm-hmm.
But it's when we entertain them or try to get to the origin of why the thought is there, is when that thought becomes very problematic.
Yes.
And
exactly.
So when you're talking about the just observe and accept and using mindfulness in this, that really does shed light on the fact that the thought can come and go. We just don't need to judge the thought.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I share with people who are having these dark thoughts that all those thoughts that you have had, I have had them as well. Like you're saying, we've all had those dark thoughts. As I call it, the OCD bully, or I like the OCD troll, like an internet troll, will jump on that and be like, well, what does that mean about you? Why are you having that? Do you want to do that? And when we start trying to answer those questions, now we're, that's like hitting the tar baby. Yeah. And we're getting stuck in it. So the acceptance can be very difficult, but can be really helpful.
I love the principles that you're throwing out here, Brandon, that just as a community that we could be more curious with folks, OCD, depression, anxiety, anything, we can be more curious with folks. I think it's that idea of being slow to judge. Yes, we do have to we do have to understand things, which is that curiosity piece, but judging people. I mean, I think that's where we have to be very careful and step back and be slow to judge, being non-judgmental towards people, and being, like these thoughts that are plaguing people. Yeah. I mean, is that, you feel like that's too strong of a word?
No, not at all.
These thoughts that are plaguing people that we can be supportive in understanding how they're walking through these things and learning as they're learning to accept, or they're walking through this, that we could offer them some sort of support. Yeah. The tricky thing is that we offer support without being a neutralizer.
Yes.
Who's saying, no, it's okay.
You're fine.
Right. And so having that blend of it being helpful.
Yeah.
So what would be a tip that you would give somebody? I'd love to hear a tip that you'd give somebody at home listening to this. What tip would you give somebody that has a loved one struggling with OCD? And what would be a tip that you would give somebody that they could do at home that feels like they struggle with OCD?
The thing that comes to my mind is actually for either of these people to first go out and seek some education. There's an organization, a foundation called International OCD Foundation. And they have a website called iocdf.org. IOCDF.org. Yeah. Or if you just Google International OCD Foundation. They've got a lot of great resources that would help either of these people. Because again, I do believe it starts with education. And so for a person who thinks they have OCD to go to that website and start doing some reading and to see, is this OCD? Am I relating to a lot of this? And okay, now I've got a name for it. This is something that's out there. This is enough people have it that there's a international foundation for it. I'm no longer all by myself and quote crazy for having this. Right. That can really tamp down the shame
and get normalizer.
Yeah, normalize it, and I think open up a person to then now get more so formalized treatment. And then again, for the family member, that a helpful website like that is, I mean, they've got a whole section of for friends and family, where they can start learning about OCD and getting educated. And if their loved one doesn't know, they can start kind of gently encouraging them of, hey, check this out. Nice. I just read this, or I just saw this video. I'd be curious if you watch it, what you thought. kind of greasing the wheels for them to then go get some help. And there's also a lot of helpful books out there. One book that I've really enjoyed is called Freedom from OCD by Jonathan Grayson. And it's got a whole treatment outline for a person to do on their own. I think it's a little bit harder to do that, but it will start giving a person really helpful tips and tricks to begin fighting back and learning that they don't have to be controlled by this.
I love that. I love the sense that we can leave the message that you do not have to be controlled by this.
Yeah.
That there is a space where people could get to the point to where they could celebrate a restored freedom from feeling like, as you said, and then I love this phrase, that the OCD bully no longer has a hold over them.
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, Brandon, thank you so much for being with us today and for enlightening us in OCD, which is it's no joking matter. It's not a colloquial thing. There really is a true struggle with this that we want to shine a light on, to illuminate, to say, if you're struggling with this, or if you have a family member struggling with this, you are not alone, and there is help. We just want to shine a light on how you might get to that help.
Yeah.
So thank you, Brandon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
If you found value in our discussion and wish to uncover more about the fascinating world of mental wellness, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Stay tuned for our upcoming episodes where Dr. Long will continue to delve into empowering therapies and strategies for mental wellness. Your journey to understanding and embracing mental health is just beginning, and we're excited to have you with us every step of the way. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and remember to celebrate restored freedom as you uncover it.